Our next speaker is Kayla Anderson, who is a second-year Master of Arts in Ecology student at Indiana University.
Recording in progress.
Originally from College Park, Maryland, Kayla's primary interests include Baroque opera, with a focus on Handel's operatic activities, and 19th century African-American popular music and arts. This presentation is taken from an ongoing project using the same material. Let us please welcome Kayla Anderson.
Thank you so much for letting me speak here. The Negro as a performer has for the first time been safely elevated to his proper place in the theatrical profession. For this is the best Negro entertainment that has ever been presented to the American public. Their bright achievements are a bright commentary on the possibilities of American cosmopolitan life. This glowing review comes from the front page of the Illinois Record, March 11th, 1899, for the third season of A Trip to Coontown. In prose, this review conveys how a keen eye interpreted Bob Cole and Billy Johnson's work as more than a farce that just happened to include coon songs. A Trip to Coontown had a unique distinction of doing something unusual in the show business. Play the worst houses in every city in its first year and playing the best houses in the next. Within its 4-year run, A Trip to Coontown under Bob Cole, a prolific African-American vaudevillain and songwriter, and his partner Billy Johnson, an African-American minstrel performer, was immensely popular for its use of smart plot and the lack of minstrel costuming. However, purity, as it was overshadowed by their contemporaries, most notably Burt Williams and George Walker's Into Homie. Ongoing scholarship on A Trip to Coontown, initiated by Thomas L. Reese with his 1981 dissertation, Black Musical Theater in New York, 1890 to 1950, which was later developed into a book, Just Before Jazz, has opened various avenues of study. Notable scholars with publications featuring the work, including Kristen Moon, David Krasner, Lynn Abbott, Doug Deroff, Alan Wall, and Marvin McAllister, range in topics such as Moon's discussion of racial otherness, including Asian representation with The Wedding of the Chinese and the Coon, in her 2002 dissertation, Yellowface, Creating the Chinese in the American Popular Music, 1850s to 1920s. McAllister's discussion on Bob Cole's use of whiteface performance in his 2011 book, Whiting Up, White-Faced Minstrels and Stage Europeans in African-American Performance, and Krasner's discussions on African-American signifying and performance in his 1997 book, Resistance, Parody, and Double Consciousness in African-American Theater, 1895 to 1910, to name a few. My addition to the scholarship contextualizes the elevated role of African-American performers and aristocracy in the Gilded Age, as seen as in A Trip to Coontown, and currently reconstructing a full performance score. This presentation will discuss a small portion of my work in which I show how the African-American aristocrat character disrupts minstrelsy expectations by reinterpreting the coon song fantasy trope via racial uplift and signifying. Bob Cole subverts the coon fantasy trope by transforming the coon into an African-American member of high society, as shown through my analysis of 2 songs, The Black 400s Ball and I Wonder What Is That Coon's Game, compared to the script of A Trip to Coontown. To start, the African-American aristocrat seen through the fantasy trope in minstrel shows is intentionally set up for failure, as money does not fulfill the aristocrat's dream or his current endeavors. Coon songs rose in popularity in the late 19th century to the early 20th century popular song, depicting African-American caricatures through dialect and ragtime idioms. Delving further, the fantasy trope perceives portrayal of wealth acquired through disreputable means such as gambling as theft. Risky means of obtaining wealth don't only appear in theft and gambling, but additionally can be seen through more far-fetched interpretations under fantasy. In a case study I am currently working on as part of a reconstruction, the fantasy trope is comparatively shown in two aristocratic characters on how the surrounding environment attempts to exploit their wealth. The titular character of Thomas Dartmouth Rice, Bone Squash Diavolo, and Silas Green Sr. in A Trip to Coontown. Thomas Dartmouth Rice, notoriously known as the father of minstrelsy and creator of the Jim Crow stock character, in 1835 wrote a two-act play called Bone Squash Diavolo. In the play, the namesake character makes a Faustian deal to obtain fortune to elevate his life by buying a ruffled shirt and Rocco shoes, striped cravat, whitewashed hat, and spectacle for the noses, to have women swoon over him, and to be looked upon as a fine dandy on Broadway. Bone Squash, however, becomes a stark representation of Zip Coon, to the point that his newfound wealth doesn't benefit him as intended. Throughout the show, the cast degrades him, takes his money in a game of craps, and women don't care for him without his money. The wealth given to the African-American aristocrat seen in this play is not viewed as an item of benefit to elevate social rank, but to act as plot convenience. A Trip to Coontown's story lies with Silas Green Sr., a recent retiree who obtained a $5,000 pension. The creator of the work play the main antagonists. Billy Johnson plays the witty, conniving Jim Flimflammer, a con man inventing plots to steal the pensioners' money. Bob Cole plays Flimflammer's sidekick, Willie Wayside, a white-faced hobo character dragged involuntarily into the scheme. Over the two acts of the show, the duo makes several passes at Silas Green Sr. to rid him of his money themselves. Coon's Game is one of many musical interruptions that occur in the production. In my reconstruction, this is one of 13 derogatory coon songs I labeled in relation to the musical, written originally in 1893 when Cole performed as a cast member in Sam T. Jack's Creole show. With A Trip to Coontown, I discovered quickly that as performing forces and locales fluctuated, so did the music, even if it meant bringing old songs to fit the story, such as I Wonder What Is That Coon's Game, reappearing in the 1897 to 1898 Grand Opera House program during the third season of the musical. The aim of my reconstruction is to thread a cohesive narrative based on the surviving script, held by the Library of Congress as rediscovered by Kristen Moon in 2011, along with other primary sources. I Wonder What Is That Coon's Game uses signifying to expose the barriers African-American aristocrats face among racial prejudice. In the first act of A Trip to Coontown, this song occurs during the third scene after Billy Johnson's character, Jim Flimflammer, had convinced Silas Green Sr. and co. to visit a pleasure garden named Coontown, but in reality, rented out under Jim's name for 3 days. The lyrics, written jointly by Cole and Johnson, tell a story about a new neighbor in town who flaunts his wealth through extravagant displays in the community. The song is completely separated from the story, and for the time being, it remains unknown who in the cast performed it in the reconstruction. This aristocratic character in I Wonder What's in That Coon's Game is seen by numerous community residents members as he drives in an automobile that has a pearl and diamond setting, wears a diamond-encrusted silk cravat, and can easily produce large sums of cash to pay bail in court. When physically describing the aristocrat, the lyrics describes that he has a face like a preacher and all dressed up in the gambler style. Yet, the unnamed person goes undetected to partake in stereotypical illicit activities, such as playing craps. Amidst rumors, the aristocrat goes about life in a passive manner. He never makes any protest when the other African-American residents wrongfully called police on him as they thought he was stealing. However, the aristocrat pays off the fine given by the court judge, $100, or in our inflation, a measly $3,000. Through the song, Cole and Johnson purposely gives agency to the aristocrat through signifying by not partaking in stereotypes and exploitation. And here's a recording that I reproduced through MIDI. character can provide agency for himself by enriching his life with his nouveau riche status. As mentioned before, I Wonder What Is That Coon's Game occurs in the third scene of Act 1's reconstruction. At this point of the story, Silas Green Sr.'s luck has dwindled through several mishaps. Green Sr. accidentally leaves all of his pension money on the train, is wrongfully arrested, and is coerced to gamble. For each of Silas's mishaps, he is stereotyped, taken advantage of, and or questioned for having wealth. Silas's nouveau riche status and desires to enrich his life are threatened. However, unlike the aristocrat in I Wonder What Is That Coon's Game or Bone Squash, Silas Green Sr. is known time and time again in these mishaps to successfully fend for himself. By the time A Trip to Coontown begins its next act, Silas Green Sr. transforms into a worldly African-American man. He bought his boarding house and fully furnishes it to include a stylish salon, sponsors African-American opera singers to perform for guests, and partakes in social diplomacy by inviting Prince Daffy from the African nation of Dahomey. By showing how Silas Green Sr. uses his wealth to improve his life, Colin Johnson hoists Silas Green Sr. out of the fantasy and other minstrel tropes to demonstrate how authentic African-American aristocracy looks like, what they look like, excuse me. And this is clearly shown in the Black 400s ball. The Black 400s ball uplifts the African-American aristocrat from the fantasy by redefining what a coon is, which is a person of color with a high-class standing. The song, which is originally written for a skit called At Jolly Coney Island, among 7 other songs in 1896 for Colin Johnson's prior troupe, the Black Patty Troubadours. This skit is missing for the time being, but my reconstruction of the work has Black 400's ball introducing the second act, and as before, it remains unknown who sang this song in the reconstruction. Labeled as a march song and chorus, the lyrics of the Black 400's ball describe in detail Black Vanderbilts and Black aristocrats in high pedigree, as they are all the hot-dressed coons of the Black 400. Through these renderings, the coon is transformed into a Black counterpart of the prestigious 400 Society of the Gilded Age. Renowned socialite Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, or Mrs. Astor. The 400 Society was the essence of New York's upper crust. To be a part of society is not merely about wealth, but how much influence and sway a person has in their social circles. In part, Mrs. Astor hosted a significant event in the form of an annual ball. American historian Eric Holmberger describes these balls as the most complexly regulated and coded forms of social interactions. The ball was a minefield of social dangers to be treated with the strictest vigilance. In A Trip to Coontown, the Black 400's ball is an homage to its grandeur and excellence. Cole subverts the fantasy trope to formally introduce the African American as a person of color with impeccable social etiquette and dress, among other attractive traits. The coon, previously labeled as a derogatory slur, has renovated the label as a compliment to equivalent African-American aristocrats to the Vanderbilts. A Trip to Coontown was a testament to the evolving climate of African-American musical theater, demonstrating what well-earned wealth can do for the African-American man outside of minstrel tropes. To revisit the review in the very beginning from the Illinois Record, for just to think that our race, a little over a quarter a century ago in bondage, are today challenging the admiration of the public, treading the stage as colored aristocrats, delighting the colored 400 and the elite of white society. The stereotypes of minstrelsy have been separated away from the fantasy trope by signifying wealth held by African Americans and uplifting African American aristocracy. This new shift helps other contemporaries and other African American musical composers to change the narrative further of fantasy and achieving aristocracy. Thank you.
Was quite a trip, I mean, a journey, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to digest all of what you have
Oh, yes.
taken us through. Are there questions?
Yes.
Very much. Do you know what influence this musical had on Will Marion Cook?
Actually, it's really funny you said that. Bob Cole and Will Marion Cook were friends for a while, but the issue was that in those musical theater circles, they were landed on two camps. Bob Cole wanted to uplift the African American and step away from coon songs, while Will Marion Cook was on the end of, we need to embrace coon songs because that's what African American life could be, but step away from the derogatory because we can't pin ourselves to portray ourselves in the white mindset. So A Trip to Coontown was extremely popular, but in terms of how other composers thought of it, it was very mixed. It was very mixed.
So I had a student a few years ago who did a detailed study of Into Homey, looking
Yes.
at Cook as
Yes.
an influence on Duke Ellington.
Mhm.
And it was striking a number in there where it starts off as a coon dance and gradually transforms into a waltz.
Yes,
Totally
sure.
without any
Mhm.
quote unquote black influence at all.
Right.
It's sort of a musical sign that the
Mhm.
black performers and composers can
Yeah.
aspire to the
Mhm.
white opera.
Yeah, and I didn't have enough time to talk about it in my talk, but this musical had really stellar reviews about these African American opera singers. Like for example, their name opera singer is called the Black Tenor of Coontown, and he sang trios from Aida. He sang like big operatic works that just were plopped in the middle of this musical, and they had other opera singers too. And at one point, I read in a couple of reviews that they even had ballets intermixed in it, but I only read it in maybe 3 or 4 reviews, so that's all I know at the moment. This reconstruction has so many moving parts that every time I see something new, I'm like, okay, I've seen that 3 other times, but I don't think it'll ever show up ever again. But yes, certainly, Bob Cole and Billy Johnson were trying to make sure that they're trying to step away from the coon song genre by showing themselves that they are well versed in other forms of music too. That was very long-winded, sorry.
I think this is such a fascinating paper.
Thank you.
And it's not an area that I know a ton about.
Sure.
So this may be an obvious first question to ask.
Okay.
What was the significance of 400?
I'll go back to that slide. So the 400 Society was formed by this social, the massive social elite, the upper crust of the Gilded Age. So just basically the millionaires of New York, and they ran everything.
Is it like 400?
Yeah, it's a list of it's literally a list of 400 people that sorry, I didn't explain further. It was literally a list that Mrs. Astor said, these people, they have the funds, they have everything, and they are very classy. They're the ones that are allowed to be on my list. And it was a very coveted list too. You want your name to be on that list.
And so great. My second question is, how widely known was the music for the show?
It was enough that like for example, if I go to the very beginning, it was this music was seen all the time in the front pages. And it toured up and down the US and Canada. And within the 4 years, they would often say, you don't want to miss Bob Cole and Billy Johnson because they are singing Chicken, they're singing this song, they're singing this song. You don't want to miss it. And to the public, their songs were highly known. And Bob Cole specifically was an extremely popular songwriter too. So anytime you see his name, there you want to see it.
I think we're gonna have to end it here,
sorry.
but that's all right. It was a fascinating paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Kayla will be happy to answer
Yes.
questions. Thank you again.
Recording